Hey everybody, my name is Snitch. Welcome to another episode of CO Select. Today's match is a tier 2 match on Lucifer. Lucifer's a pretty interesting map. 3 bases, airport, 1 comm tower, but it's got this big mountain range that makes it like really, really like choky kind of, I guess. Artillery generally very good on this map. We get a few decent rock positions, I think, but it's a strong side, weak side map. So you have one side with your 2 bases into a 1 base with the HQ. So generally you play, more aggressively on your 2 base side. Try and break the formations and push in and take some of these contested cities. These 2 cities in the center are quite contested as well. But mainly these 3, I think, on either side are kind of the ones that you're playing for mainly. And maybe these 2 in the center. Yeah, you're using that to get economic advantage and then try and crush the single base side. So yeah, I did mention today's match is a tier 2 match, but I'm actually playing Rachel. I had a game against another viewer actually, where I played the opposite side of this matchup, and I actually found that Rachel is really, really good on this map. So I was, interested in taking her into tier 2, much like the earlier opponent I had did. I forgot the name, apologies, but I'm sure they know who they are. But yeah, this mountain range makes covering fire really, really easy. Like, a lot of these fights are extremely choky. You have to group your units a lot and kind of push through these narrow openings. So covering fire is like really hard to play around and really easy to get value out of. Obviously, Olaf is similarly valuable. Mass damage makes it very easy to break through these holds, but covering fire is a little bit of a quicker generation. And yeah, I just generally wanted to try Rachel again, kind of like a tier 2 environment, because she seemed really good on the map when I played against it before. Rachel's day-to-day is she heals units for 1 more than the average CO. She does pay repair costs, so sometimes it's a little bit of a problem, but generally you can get value out of repairing units a little bit faster, especially on the front lines. It can be very valuable. Her regular CO power is Lucky Lass, gives her 0 to 40 luck instead of the standard 0 to 9 for 1 turn. And then her superpower is Covering Fire, which is 3 missiles, 1 that hits your opponent's highest accumulation of value, 1 that hits your opponent's highest accumulation of HP, and 1 that hits your opponent's greatest mass of infantry. And generally on this map, you'll find those areas overlap pretty heavily a lot of the time. Just kind of how it goes with the way that units clump and kind of are forced to play. Opponents play Olaf. Olaf's day-to-day is that he is not affected by snow. His regular CO power makes it snow for 1 day, and his superpower does 2 mass damage to all of your opponent's units, and also makes it snow for 1 day. Obviously, Olaf's generally a super focused CO, as is Rachel. Neither of these COs want to be using their regular power pretty much ever. Yeah, it's pretty much no condition. I think one time in a fog game I used Olaf's CO power to like delay my opponent from being able to reach their HQ in time or something. So maybe that's like one condition, but it's very, very, very rare. Generally both of these COs are super COs, and so that means I'm going to be wanting to use Rachel in this game to take advantage of my slightly faster charge and try to get valuable covering fires off before the Winter Fury comes, and use that to kind of break holes in my opponent's army, so then when I do get returned on with the Winter Fury, I already have enough of an advantage in the fights that my opponent can't get enough out of it. That's kind of my game plan, and that's why I went for Rachel on this map. So yeah, let's just get straight into it, shall we? Let me take a sip of the OJ. Corn to be hydrated. So, standard 2 infantry build. Obviously both players, we're going to be going for our neutral bases first. Nothing weird here. Hope we're all doing well today. A little bit of a later release on this episode, I guess 3 days between this one. Just didn't really have the time to record on the episode. So, it's standard stuff. A bit different in the capture phase, maybe? I don't think so. I think we're generally going for the same properties actually, so pretty similar capture phase overall. What you will notice is pretty much always, like I said, these 3 cities are quite contestable, so these are always the ones that you're trying to try and get ahead of time if you can with your single base without giving up too much timing and efficiency. It'd be really important to try and get control of them before your opponent establishes themselves with the 2 base side. Very similar capture phases right now. I'm already capturing my airport. My opponent hasn't gone for it yet, so that's one difference, I suppose, but it shouldn't be that substantial. And my first tank comes out on my strong side on the left, looking to threaten these two cities basically and force a tank out of this side so that, you know, I can more easily contest the properties on this side. You see my infantry's already positioned to capture one of these on the next turn, depending on where this infantry goes, I suppose. Although I don't think I can ever reach this one on the outside. This outside city is actually very easy to reach with the single base side, so it's always something to look out for if your opponent manages to sneak in and snag it. Because it can be very hard to wrestle control back of as well. It's quite a weirdly isolated location with these mountains and these forests that make it quite difficult to actually access with a lot of units. My opponent now moving down for the airport. I'm against Gyuha, by the way, another viewer of the channel. Really nice individual. We've played a few games here and there. See them on ladder a fair bit. Yeah, so they have the responsive tank ready to prohibit to stop my pressure on the left side. But it does mean, like I say, that this right side's a little bit easier for me to get access to now. I think there's always an interesting, you know, thought process here of like whether you want to respond to your opponent's tank or like, I don't know, I read people talk about in the Discord and stuff about how sometimes you just want to commit to the attack, you know? Like here you're handshaking the defense, right? And we won't get anything done here. But maybe it's better to like also build a tank on this side, you know, and threaten this side as well, and then be pressuring my contested cities and just kind of, because like the way this goes, right, is I'm 2 bases here, so inevitably once my economy gets rolling, you know, it'd be harder and harder to hold this position. No matter how many units you build here, I could always end up building 2, right? So it does bode the question, and it's something I've been thinking about lately of like whether it is worth it just to even handshake this defense. Like, yeah, you're gonna get pressured out here, but you could be pressuring on the other side as well, right? And your opponent wouldn't have the economy to like build tanks on both sides, so you'll both just be like winning a side. And maybe that's just okay. I don't know, it's interesting. But I guess that's the choice that player 2 has to make. So I do go for an interrupt here on this this cap. I definitely could have gone for the other city instead, but I push up for the aggressive one. Maybe a mistake in hindsight. Moving more infantry up. Got my airport captured. Start capturing my comm tower. My opponent's captured, started capturing as well. I actually just decided to reposition this tank to the center and kind of cover these central properties instead, because I couldn't get a hit on any of these because of the tank here. Built my first copter this turn. A little bit more expensive than a tank build, but a little bit better for my unit count. And it will presumably force an anti-air on my opponent. Moving up infantry on the left side. They've got a tank coming up on the right side as well. They start trying to capture this property. But it is with the damaged infantry, so it gives me an extra turn to respond to it. Anti-air does come out. And that tank moves up in the center as well to contest mine. Finish my comm tower cap. Moving my infantry forwards onto this mountain range. I just go for another hit on this infantry as well. Get my infantry on the city to start healing. I get a 9-3 here, so I'm pretty fine about it, and I'm healing up the damaged one, whereas my opponent is not, so I guess, you know, maybe it's a bit of an aggressive attack, especially because I won't be able to, like, stop this anti-air immediately from threatening my copter, but I do move my tank over here, actually, as well, and build a tank on the left side. See, I bring the tank over here to, like, hold this area. If the tank comes and tries to get a first strike, I have the copter to counter, and then even if the anti-air comes in, I'll still be ahead, I think, so... And I built another tank on the left to cover my infantry over here. So yeah, I'm actually playing like quite defensively, I suppose, by pulling my strong side units onto the weak side for now, but at the same time, I don't have the money to establish a strong side in a good position yet. But you see, my opponent is getting some good contested properties here, so... I'd say maybe these two are a bit more contestable than this one, maybe, because this one is actually a little bit easier to reach. It's still 2 turns, but I guess all 3 of them are fairly contested. At least from my experience on this map. So moving their infantry to the center, they start going for the other capture. I do have a lot of infantry posture here to get the interrupt. They bring a copter out as well. They take a defensive position here in the mountain range. I'm getting a good strike on my infantry. Just walk up, start capturing this outside property. Not sure why I hit from here instead of here. I think here might be a little bit better, but you know, never mind. Move my units down. Bring this copter to the center. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. A little bit dangerous. I might lose that if I'm not careful. But you know, I think I do end up realizing that, and I block it off with other units. I think this is a best position, but I think I have the infantry and the tank to actually yeah, block it off. So if they do go for this, they try to go for this with the anti-air, it shouldn't be possible anymore. I don't think they have enough units to kill this infantry and still have the anti-air to hit this. So just get a nice central position. My copter, you know, threaten some of these left units. Can get over this mountain range to hit something from behind, maybe. Build my first artillery on the left, and another my own anti-air, and an infantry on the right. I start capturing my center properties as well. I did get the interrupt over here too. And I have a big infantry advantage just because of the nature of this being my 2 base sides, so it's very hard for my opponent to go for these. You know, it's the same thing where I'm doing here. It's a little bit far, because yeah, eventually your opponent's infantry are going to catch up from their strong side, because they just naturally are building more infantry over here because of the 2 base nature. So you do have to be cautious not to get overwhelmed by the unit count. They are trading back. Getting some good first strikes. I actually do get an interrupt on this center cap. Copter's moving forwards. I get a hit with the tank. Anti-air moves back here. So covering this infantry a little bit. But only if I hit it from this silo tile. And still just some trading going on in the middle. I think we're both pretty happy to be trading, because obviously we're both very super focused, so I think we're fine to be taking combat. Just as long as you don't get overwhelmed, you know, you want to be building your charge bar as these CEOs and try and get to the super so you can get a big turn. Artillery comes out on the left for my opponent. A little bit early, I think, maybe a bit dangerous, but you know, it's mostly... Actually, they did have the funding to build a tank here. Like, artillery can be good, but it's much harder to wall on this side, especially when all these units are trading already. The amount of units that exist for my opponent to, like, use to create space for the anti-air are getting kind of low. Start capturing this neutral. I actually just move in with the tank instead and hit this, and then I get a first strike on the tank instead. Move my anti-air down to cover this copter if they go for the copter to copter hit. So this is a pretty big first strike for me, I think. Punish my opponent's aggressive attack here. Get my artillery in a good position to lock this city. This is a good move because if you can set it up before this city gets captured, because now it's really hard for my opponent to ever contest this. And without copters, it's very hard to get to this artillery position. So this pretty much blocks off the ability for my opponent to take this city at this point at all. So I don't even have to worry as much about trading infantry here anymore. I'm still going to do it because, you know, infantry fight is funny. But, you know, I'm just saying, I wouldn't have to worry as much. Keep capturing this city, should get it next turn. I brought my tank around here and my infantry to finish off this infantry and thing. They have no tanks here now that are strong, because this one's only 5 HP, so now I have a complete domination on this left side. Just have to be cautious about this right side, because I've kind of given up a lot of my units over here. I am contesting some properties, but I have a lot of infantry, and I have a tank covering a few of them, so... My opponent will likely push in on their strong side now, as well. Copter comes up, gets a hit. Yeah, I did end up giving a first strike here, which I didn't see, I think. Yeah, my anti-air can't rate. But I'm in range at the copter, actually. That's why I wasn't too nervous, I remember now. Because my copter was kind of covering this tank as well. Obviously, the anti-air can move forwards, but then, you know, my tank is in range. And like I said, there's no other tanks in this area to cover. Opponent moving the artillery forwards. Trying to hold this backward city now. Taking some first strikes on my infantry with their tanks. Just trying to clean up my men here. Is this on? Yeah, this is first turn, so I still have to capture it on the turn on that one. Anti-air does come back, but now it's not really covering much of anything. But it's really hard because my opponent lost their tank here, basically. It's only on 5 HP now. I guess I could have swung around and hit this. I'm not sure if pulling it all the way back was better than just getting a double hit on this and making this one even weaker. But yeah, not quite at range to cover the copter. Maybe a little bit more to the left would be better, but it is really hard because I have a tank right here. Even if my opponent is covering, you know, if I get a big hit on this anti-air, then I can just hit this copter with a first strike. It gives me really strong control of this area. Because then they only have tanks into copter. And obviously tanks don't do that well in that matchup. It's kind of how the unit triangle works. So, what do? I actually end up noticing I get a first strike here. So a little bit of an overextension again from my opponent. Just kind of not checking everything. You know, obviously it can be hard when I keep front switching quite actively. Finish off this capture. Economy's equal right now. We haven't neither of us have managed to secure this kind of aggressive property, so we're both at an equal state. I do get the first strike of this copter. Get a 7-3. Finish off this infantry. End up moving my artillery forwards and going for this capture. They don't really have the you know, the what's the word I'm looking for? The direct units to actually break through this line. Like they can, you know, infantry here, and then hit my artillery with infantry, but then I'm just getting like free dudes basically. So once the tanks are gone here, it just gives me more confidence to just push up and start contesting this property. I do actually hit this with a weakened infantry just to put it to 9, because I think my reinforcements are coming, right? I think now that I got a big hit on this tank, and I kind of have like a 2, you know, a 10 and an 8 to a 10 and a 5, and this one isn't even in range to really interact yet. I am feeling pretty confident that I should be able to actually stop this property capture within like 2 turns, like with more reinforcements coming. So I end up actually just like sacking to get the hit here. I block this tank in as well, so it's a bit of a disaster for my opponent. It's kind of the danger of going for big first strikes in quote unquote free areas. Like obviously, you know, my tank was in range to cover here, but just generally, like, you really have to be careful when surrounded by infantry that you just don't get your unit blocked and then forced to take another bad trade. It could be a kind of a problem that happens when you're always looking for these like free hits all the time. It's definitely something that can wind up happening to you. I move my anti forwards here to cover all these units. But the copter's weak. There is another one coming, so I'm just getting in position. My opponent's next turn. They do move the tank up, trying to free their tank. They actually end up going for the hit here anyway, which I thought was kind of weird. I feel like, you know, you could have just backed it off at this point and tried to heal it, but they're willing to sack it. I suppose they get a hit on this, but it's already 2 captured, so I actually ended up, you know, creating enough space here to be able to capture this property. This is generally like something you're always trying to do, right? Is create a fight near units that are trying to get actual economic value. So I will end up getting this property. Their anti-air is coming over to the left, trying to cover my copter. I actually ended up doing 2 tanks on the left here. I figured I didn't need more reinforcements because of like the state of the board, and I knew this tank couldn't get hit by this one. So I figured I already had a tank advantage here, and I didn't immediately need another tank. So I just built 2 on the left side to help continue my conquest over here, trying to get these neutrals. So copter moving forward. They built a tank on the left side, and they finally get artillery on the right side as well. My next turn, I do finish off this this tank, move forward, get a big first strike. Looks like I'm not going to stop this property though, which is unfortunate, but I mean it could have happened, so I don't feel too bad about it. Finish off the copter with 2 infantry, move my tank around into the city to start getting healed up. I end up walking onto this property and start trying to contest it, while moving my other units forward. So I've got 2 tanks coming. I end up just taking this copter just to take another first strike. I think this is like really inconveniencing my opponent, and I guess I just, you know, this was already damaged and didn't, you know, with this anti-air here, it was going to be hard for it to get too much more value, I kind of felt like, I guess. So I just ended up taking a pretty, you know, a 3 for 5, and it just completely cuts off this copter. I don't know if this is super worth it, but copters do so well on first strikes that, you know, I ended up taking a 5 for 4 trade here, even though I was damaged. So, you know, value-wise, it's obviously still better for me. So I'm never really sure. This is a play that I make, you know, a fair few times, or sometimes, not a fair few times, but I've definitely done it. And sometimes, obviously, it looks much better than others, but, you know, here I felt like it wasn't that bad. I end up join camping here, because I'm pretty confident I can get this city. My opponent doesn't have the units still to move in, unless they move in infantry and just start losing them all. Like, they'd have to give up so many units to, like, stall this, because they also have to stall this on the left, which limits this infantry from doing anything but attacking on the left if they want to stop this. You know, they can walk in with the 2 infantry, but then they're going to lose all their units, and then I'll be able to, like, break through. So I'm feeling pretty confident that I should be able to join cap and get this. Covering fire coming pretty soon. Do have to be a little bit nervous with my opponent being able to generate Winter Fury this turn, but I don't think they have enough good attacks, maybe. I could be wrong. So do interrupt this infantry, move another one over to the left. They finish off the copter. Their copter's going over to the right. So you see, like I said, the whole map is about this like big mountain ridge. Like look at the formation of my units. I just have like this huge wall across the ridge. Opponent takes an infantry here, starts moving their artillery up, pulls their tank back, and actually built a rocket. Excuse me, on the right as well, which is pretty insane. And, you know, it gives me a lot, even more confidence on the left. Like you see, I built another 2 tanks here, so I already have 4 tanks coming to 1. And my opponent isn't even committing units to the left side anymore, and they're pushing the copter to the right side. So it really feels like we're now both trying to play the attack, you know, mind game. And on this turn, I'm pretty confident I can get covering fire. So I'm just looking for ways to, like, get solid trades, I think, to try and force covering fire on this turn, maybe. I'm not sure if it's this turn or the next turn, but I'm really close at this point. And I do want to be the one that hits it first, if I can. I guess it's not this turn. I think this turn I just play fairly safely because I want to try and not get Winter Furied before I get Covering Fire. So this is a really, you know, kind of important mindset about power generation. Once again, I just dumped 2 tanks over here. Like, I'm just dumping more and more vehicles over here, especially that my opponent's committing 15k to the right side. I'm just going to keep dumping tanks on the left until I have too many for my opponent to deal with. That's kind of my game plan right now. So yeah, I'm trying to pull units or keep them in spots where my opponent can't force a strong attack on this turn, because they still need 9k generation. So I'm just trying to limit how much actual damage they could do, because, you know, if Winter Fury comes in and I'm not really prepared for it, I could take a really bad turn. And I want to be the person getting my power first, like I said. So, you know, I'm just giving them hits on infantry if they want them. They do take a vehicle hit here, but it's not much damage because the copter's already damaged. And I'm on a city, so I'm feeling fine about it. And I'm Rachel, which means I get +3. So I'm just trying to actually limit how much fighting there is until I can get a turn where I can control me getting Covering Fire within the turn. Because I guess, like Olaf, Covering Fire is a power that you can mostly hit at any time. Obviously, before the turn is generally better because, you know, it gives you more options with, like, how to fight and, like, the first strikes you can take and stuff like this, but it's generally a button you can hit pretty much anywhere through a fight. So this turn, yeah, I'm literally pro 50 away from Covering Fire, so obviously this time I'm going to try and play aggressive. Bam, immediately get it with my first attack. Pop Covering Fire, and you see I just kind of like shred all across the mountain range. Like, all these infantry get put to 7. All these infantry get put to 7. I hit the tank and the artillery. And I hit this rocket twice, which is really, you know, substantial. I hit my opponent's vehicles here, so I got so many vehicle hits. And this is kind of what I'm talking about, you know? It's like, yeah, I didn't hit every unit like Olaf would, but the nature of the map kind of forces my opponent to group their units, which, you know, puts me in this position where, you know, it's almost like I had mass damage. Like, yeah, they maybe didn't have to group as much as they did. They know Covering Fire is coming. Maybe they could have played a little bit more defensive in positions and not had the units grouped so much and maybe kept the infantry somewhere away from their vehicles. But I feel like the map just kind of, like, wants you to play like this. And then, you know, as soon as this happens, I basically just got, you know, It was like I had massive damage, right? Like, you know, so I started pushing on the left on all my vehicles now, getting huge hits. Managed to pick off the artillery straight away, clean up a bunch of the infantry. Feeling really confident about this left side now. Get more first strikes, moving my infantry onto the mountains. Starting to pressure some of these properties, even the HQ maybe. Get another big hit on the infantry here, finish off this tank. Moving my other tanks down. Moving some other infantry on the right. Especially getting 2 hits on this rocket is so valuable for me. Like, you know, this is instantly 9k of value, which is super substantial. And obviously the Winter Fury is coming next turn, so I'm being a little bit careful not to overextend too much here on the right, because, you know, I don't want to get blasted, but my opponent doesn't have too many units in a great position. No real tanks over here to threaten. Staying outside of the rocket's range, except with this infantry, because I'm stupid. But they don't have, the vehicles over here to kind of threaten, you know, any counterattacks here. Winter Fury does come out. I take a reasonable chunk, 20k value. It does hurt. I don't know what happened to my opponent's turn. Let's try again. So they pull this 1 HP tank back to the HQ, get a hit on my infantry, get a first strike on my tank. I lose another infantry. Gotta be a little bit careful with my foot soldiers here because I do want to be playing more for the properties than anything else. Trying to get some of the contested ones. This is definitely a little bit far to push up, by the way, obviously, because it's right within my opponent's reinforcements, but at the same time, I had really big first strikes. You know, this tank got put to 1 HP, and there's only 1 tank coming back, so I think it was generally fine for this turn. But I don't want to hold this position for long, because, you know, medium tanks, they could all just come out of here and just start pushing me back, and I'm never going to get this city reasonably, for example, unless I really have a massive advantage. I do have a big unit count lead. I'm like 6 tanks to 2, or 5.5, I guess. You know, this is like 2 HP. Less than a half. So it is possible for me to overwhelm, but generally I still want to play cautiously because this is very far forwards. So my opponent's moving up with their infantry. Trying to pressure this right city. I don't want to give that up if I can avoid it. A little bit of an economic advantage for me, by the way, now, because I did manage to get this contested and this one. This is kind of where the swing is. I managed to win 2 here, and I have 2 here. So, like I said, these are like these 3, and these 2 are the contested properties. This is actually maybe a video I wanted to look at. I don't know if I'll do like more theory videos, but I think it's definitely a question that even I struggle with sometimes, which is like, how do I win a game?
And obviously it's very, you know, the answers should be obvious. It's like, take the HQ, kill your opponent's units, but getting to that point, especially in PvP, especially against better players, becomes more and more difficult because as you climb the rating, people just don't make mistakes as often. People just don't misposition units. They don't blunder, you know? They start playing a lot slower. They only fight when they're strong, you know? And when these kind of situations occur, I think it does become harder to, like, just be like, okay, well, how do I win? You know? Like, what are the steps to winning? And a lot of it really stems from, you know, as I've come to realize, is acknowledging which properties on the map are actually contested, and where are you stronger, you know? So in this situation, you know, like I said, these three, and these two in the middle are the contested ones. So we've got 1 for 1 here, but here I'm 4 to 2. So that's why I'm 2k up, and that's where my advantages are, you know? So I'm always looking to try and get these properties. Also, I'm saying I have to be careful with my foot soldiers, you know, because really the win I want here is to get this property. You know, this fight doesn't really matter. I'm never going to overwhelm this base reasonably, especially not in the snow now, but, you know, it's going to be hard to push through, especially if my opponent just starts dumping units here. So really, I'm trying to, like, get this city, you know, I'm trying to hold these 2 cities. That's the win condition for me, and then building an economic advantage. And then, as soon as you have an economic advantage, you just play slow, start pushing out units until your army is just much stronger than your opponent, you know? And that's kind of like that's kind of like the way to win, I guess, in these kind of scenarios. But it does sound kind of funny, and you know, it was like a thing I was thinking of, is like, how do you win a game? Like, it is an interesting thing, and it's kind of weird, because the answer should be obvious, but it's actually, a little bit harder than it seems sometimes, I think. So just trading back on my right side here. Like I said, like, I don't want to lose my foot soldiers here, but it's the same for my opponent, you know? If I can destroy their foot soldiers, they actually can't get much done in this side, because I just want to maintain the property advantage that I have. So I pick off the infantry here, start capturing this left property, moving my units down. They actually had to build a tank here because they didn't have much funding, so I guess that made me confident to kind of keep pushing a bit, but I feel that this is just too much. I think I should just play a bit safer at this point. You know, I'm still 5 tanks to 2, but they're both full HP, so I'll end up being like 3 tanks and an artillery. I mean, my artillery is not in a bad spot here, I suppose. But yeah, I think this is probably just too much. I should just chill at this point, and try and focus on capturing this property instead of just continuing to push forwards here, even if I'm getting like reasonable trades and picking things off and this kind of stuff. And I have like decent cover and more units coming. Like, I think it's just a bit much. But I guess it will inevitably probably force a stronger build, like a medium tank, out of my opponent, and I guess that's also a win because it weakens the push that they have on their right side. So overall, not an amazing turn. My opponent starts capturing this right city. I do have a tank in position to interrupt it, so I'm feeling pretty fine about it. I can hit from the forest or the plain, so they can't block me off with this infantry. Still trading back here. They move their tank in, get a first strike. Rockets coming forwards. More infantry moving in. Trading foot soldiers. Copter finishes off my 1 HP tank. Feels better, man. More tanks coming forwards. So you see, they're starting to push through here, but they are kind of behind me on tempo. But this is what the game has become about, like trying to play aggressive on either right side. They actually focus my anti-air and build a copter. And yeah, they actually ended up having the base skip here. So this is what I mean, where like I'm applying enough pressure that it's forcing big builds out of my opponent. You know, they drop tank copter, but they don't build any units on the right side. So this is kind of a unit count win for me. And it'll, again, if I stop these foot soldiers, now there's no more even coming. You know, my opponent isn't even building units on the right side now. I get the interrupt on this city with this tank. Finish off this infantry. Put more infantry over here to kind of like wall this tank from getting through and getting a big first strike if I can. I don't know if it's possible because I just kind of don't have the units necessarily, but doing my best. Still trading here on the left, using these weakened tanks to kind of like hit infantry and force them back. Still taking first strikes where I can. I mean, yeah, it's not the worst. I put this anti-air on the city so we can start getting repaired and kind of cover my units. The copter's not quite in range because I took the fight on the left. This tank might get a big hit, but now I have the artillery covering for the most part. You know, I can finish off this tank, but I should get a strong counter hit here in theory. Start capturing this port actually, which is kind of like a testament to like, again, you know, I'm fighting here, but the gains are here and here. You know, I want to get this contested city, which I should be able to get now that I've made enough space. Finish off enough units, so overall I got what I wanted, but I also ended up going for this port as well because of the way my opponent's playing, where they're kind of giving up the center and pushing a lot on the right, and they don't actually have any units to stop this now, so if I can get this in 3 turns, that could be pretty substantial as well. And even if the copter moves up, Next turn, this is 4 HP. I can put it on this city to cover. Then suddenly the copter can't even hold this anymore. So definitely potential. Moving this copter on the right to cover as well. Build another tank over here. Get a new anti-air to replace this one if it does end up going down, if I do have to sack it for something, but hopefully it won't come to that. My opponent does actually end up picking up the 2 HP tank, but you know, it's pretty fine. I'm okay with it. They've got tanks moving forwards on the right here. They end up picking up infantry, but yeah, they're not able to get a first strike on this tank, which is what I was hoping for. Pushing the units forward aggressively. The rockets comes up really far. But yeah, once again, like, because of the shorter bar that I have, it's more likely they'll get to covering fire faster than my opponent, unless they really start losing fights. So that's basically what I'm going to be looking for, is trying to get a second covering fire, maybe to take a win. And yeah, the medium tank does come down here on the left, and again, they're base skipping on the right, you know, but my opponent is very limited. Like, I have such control of this area. This feels like maybe it could have come out maybe last turn, but I guess just a medium tank alone isn't going to do much. Maybe they need the tank first and the copter. But yeah, once again, they have to skip 2 bases, try to controlling my pressure. And at the end of the day, I'm done here, you know? I don't think I'm going to get this city realistically ever. But I've already captured this one. And then, you know, we talked about contested properties, and once again, then I'm 5-1. And then that's when I have, you know, a 20k, or sorry, a 19k to 15k plus 4,000 advantage, you know? Especially if I can deny this capture. Be very difficult for my opponent. So yeah, that finish off the city, and then like I said, I'm done here. I'll just start pulling my units back. I definitely don't want to fight into a medium tank for no reason. Get a 2-hit KO on this tank, and then I end up getting a nice first strike here. This property takes another 2 days, so I felt pretty confident going for the fight instead. I am fighting into the rockets, but it is pretty damaged, so should be reasonably fine. Take some big first strikes, pull this tank over from the left. You know, my opponent only has 2 weakened tanks now. They do have this anti-air, but I have a double tank wall, or I have an 8 HP tank blocking. I mean, it is possible maybe for my opponent, you know, rocket hit, tank hit, tank hit. But then their position is so open. And then, like I said, I've noticed that they're not building here, so I know there's no more units coming. Controlling this force means that's it. Like, there's no more reinforcements on the way. They're all being built over here, so. Yeah, still going for this property on the right. Just pulling units back. I think I should have pivoted the anti-air over here. But at the same time, this is already 18 captured, so the copter can't even interrupt it anyway, so I guess I didn't worry about it that much, but I think, yeah, either way, I should have brought the anti-air over here, and then put this tank on this city or something, it would have been a bit better. So they do go for hit this infantry, but it's just too late. They can't do enough damage. So I am going to end up getting this port as well, so that's another swing. You know, I'm already at a 4,000 income advantage. And, you know, at this point, like I said, I just need to slow the game down. They do end up going for this break, and they do pick off my copter, which kind of sucks. But at the same time, it's a lot of power generation for me, and my opponent's resources are very limited. So covering fire now will really just break a big hole open in the rest of their units. The medium tank's moving forwards. But yeah, I will manage to snag this port. And the other thing is, like, at this point of the game, it's very difficult for my opponent to build any foot soldiers because, you know, they need vehicles to sustain their pushes and defend their properties. So once I get these captures, it's very hard for my opponent to ever kind of, oops, I think I skipped a little bit, ever set up again, you know, an infantry line and start pressuring the captures back. They do end up building infantry here on the right, another tank on the left. Again, you know, they still feel forced to build units over here because of the size of my army on the left side and how dominant I am over here. I do stop this capture. Have to commit the full tank for it, so that kind of sucks, but it happens. Now I end up moving an anti over here on the right. I just end up pushing forwards a little bit here. I think my artillery placement is a bit bad. I think I should have gone here and here. I end up kind of placing them kind of weirdly, which doesn't really cover many units actually, so I think they should have maybe gone here and here, but it's a little bit rough because, you know, the tank one-shots, but I do have 2 artillery, so they cover each other. So if my opponent does want to commit to get hits on the indirects, you know, I have more indirects covering, and then there's a bunch of tanks and stuff here anyway, right? So I think there was definitely better army placement here. I wasn't really happy with this after I did it. Finishing off infantry where I can, I was getting low. Get a big hit on this tank, put my other tank back to the HQ. Well, finish off the tank, sorry. Pull my other tank back to the HQ. And yeah, you know, I could be killing this anti-air. I could be doing all sorts in the middle, but I just choose to take the city instead, because like I said, at this point, I'm 20k per turn to 14k per turn. At this point, I just need to slow it down. I don't even think I need to push forwards here, honestly. I should probably just hold this line, and then just keep pumping out units, because my opponent just can't build at the same rate that I can now. And yeah, it goes back to that question, right? Of like, how do I win a game of Advance Wars? And it, it can be pretty complicated. Like I said, I end up giving a free strike here. Just bad army placement. Pretty unhappy with this afterwards. I lose an anti-air as well. Just really sloppy. And like I said, I probably don't even need to be pushing forwards here. I can honestly just slow it down. There's no need for it. Because, my opponent doesn't have any infantry. They can't contest these properties back. Still losing some units on the top right here, but I'm feeling pretty fine about it. I still have the 2 properties that I probably shouldn't have. The 2 cities here. I'm even capturing the central city now as well, because once again, the fight's all over here. There's nothing to kind of cover over here on the left. So, I'm still just taking advantage of how advantageous my left side is. And just using that to kind of, like, sneak my opponent's properties from the central area that they can't afford to commit units to. So once again, I'm in covering fire. Too many attacks from my opponent. I think, again, it's hard. They want to be pressuring and punishing my units on the right side, but it's always generating me power. And then once again, I have covering fire before they have Winter Fury. So just gonna pop it. Bam! Completely decimates this clump with a double hit. I also get to hit this clump down here. Pretty much couldn't have gone better for me. I just start, sliding through units. Does this 1 HP infantry kill the rocket? I don't know, it might do. I end up going for this property capture. I don't know, I think I'm just kind of like, I just feel like the game is pretty won at this point because of my economic advantage. I don't think these attacks are necessarily correct, or this capture, but I guess I am kind of overwhelming at this point. And they did put an infantry down here finally, maybe trying to get back, and a double tank over here, but... So I guess I know there's no reinforcements coming, and these are kind of the only units my opponent has. But I'm still not sure this is realistic. Oh, either way. I guess at this point, I do have overwhelm potential, especially once the infantry came out here. So I assume I did this in response to seeing an infantry, because now I know there's no more tanks coming for this time, and I can pick off the ones that my opponent does have, or chunk them, especially with the covering fire. And I guess I have the super +10/+10 this turn, so never a better time. Oh, tragic. You had one job, 1 HP infantry. I ever walk this infantry down here. I'm just gonna start hitting. Yeah, I'm just gonna start trying to capture this property with this 3 HP infantry. Screw it, man. What's the worst that could happen? Is it gonna happen realistically? Probably not. My opponent pulls units back, gets the tank on the HQ. They do hit the Winter Fury. Again, get a 20k value. Not bad at all. Pick up this tank on the infantry. Don't get any interrupts on this infantry yet, so... Maybe I actually can get this property, but it seems pretty unlikely. Putting the units back, interrupting this capture with the anti-air, because this force is completely decimated now. They've kind of lost everything from covering fire. This copter is on a journey. I don't know where it's going, actually. I guess I can't hit it, and maybe it's threatening my bases from behind? I don't know. I feel like it was probably better used to be sustaining this area. So yeah, because my opponent didn't hit this infantry, I actually feel like I probably can get this city, even if I give up a bit of material for it. And again, I have the double artillery in a pretty solid spot now. Actually, a reasonable spot for my artillery to be in. Pretty much covering every unit now, so finally I managed to put my artillery in a reasonably good position. I end up just joining this 1 HP infantry, because it's probably not going to do anything. Moving more tanks in to reinforce. Moving these tanks back to heal. My opponent's army is retreating. I just handshake the retreat and also fall back. Just gonna rebuild more units. Get another double tank over here and an infantry on the right. Day 20 rolls around. And I guess my opponent resigns, but the replay's bugged. Okay, well, I guess the replay's bugged, but at this point, my opponent decided to resign. And yeah, I mean, you can't really blame them, I think. I mean, just looking at the game state, I am going to get this city next turn. Then I'm going to be, plus 8k a turn. That's literally a tank. In additional value. I can literally make a tank every turn. Because I'll be 21k to 13k, so I can just make a tank every turn that my opponent can't make, And that kind of advantage becomes pretty insurmountable at some point. But I do think this was a pretty interesting game that kind of showed, like, playing to your strong side. Defensively holding your weak side where you can. And I think, it had a good look at, kind of a concept I'm trying to introduce more myself, which is, paying attention to where the contested properties on the map and understanding what you're actually trying to play for. And yeah, on a deeper level, understanding how you actually win a game against better players. Or even, I suppose worse players as well. Worse players won't be as aware of these mechanics, so... if you are a better player, that could be a way that you can take advantage of people. Just by getting control of these cities that they don't recognize that that's where they should be fighting, maybe. But either way, just having, being able to address where the fighting is relevant and acknowledging win conditions, and you know, I mean, there's still ways I can improve for sure, like playing slower when I have advantages, and not going so overzealous for just no reason, like, you know, I mean, there's definitely ways I could play better, but I think this game was pretty good, and I think it was really interesting as well with having Rachel in a tier 2 game when she isn't tier 2 on this map, I think. I'm still not sure if she should be. Obviously, I did win this game and it's fairly convincing, but I don't know if you should be able to do that every time, maybe. Maybe if my opponent played a bit more cautiously or played better on power generation, they could have had, Winter Fury before me, because it's not a substantial difference. It is one more bar, but, you know, I think that's only 9,000 funds, right? So I think realistically my opponent should be able to maybe match it. But either way, I think it was a pretty good game. And yeah, it showcased some of those things I was talking about. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like. It really helps out the channel. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you enjoyed this content, make sure to subscribe. New video every 2 or 3 days. You know, try to post 3 or 4 a week. But yeah, thank you guys so much for checking it out. And I will see you guys next time. Have a good one. Bye!